That child, it's my blood, mine, and one of your kinds.
Leon's brow creased, a chill snaking down his spine.
Impossible. Salaris and humans, that's never happened.
But Sylvana's lips curled into a bitter, fleeting smile, laced with regret.
His name was Ethan Ride, a pilot from your Earth Alliance. Your brother in arms in that Salaris prison camp, where you survived. But he didn't.
Welcome to the Vault of Tales, a treasure trove of science fiction stories. Today we step into the journey of a rugged human survivor and a mesmerizing Salaris queen in the story, Legacy of the Stars. In a galaxy ruled by the ruthless Salaris Empire, they uncover a child with ancient, godlike power, a hybrid key to humanity's forgotten dominion, leading to epic battles against a tyrannical general and a cosmic awakening that unites humanity's scattered survivors. Let's get started. In the year 2785, the galaxy stretched out like a frozen coliseum, cold, merciless, and vast. Humanity, we were nothing more than ants, crawling beneath the boots of ancient empires that ruled the stars. Amid that endless void stood Captain Leon Carter, a solitary figure on the battered bridge of the Silver Hawk, a mercenary ship, patched together from the wreckage of a dozen forgotten wars. At 6'1", his frame was forged steel, tough as the hull beneath his feet. Scars crisscrossed his face and arms, each one a silent testament to a hell he'd clawed his way out of, a hell called Salaris. His gray eyes, sharp as glacial ice, locked onto the flickering console as a faint distress signal pierced the cosmic night. "Captain," came the raspy voice of Jax, the wiry tech with a mop of tangled hair, hunched over his station in the corner of the bridge, signals coming from the northeast quadrant, near the Glacara ice rim. It looks Salaris, but it's garbled, something's off, way too much interference." Leon's brow furrowed, fingers drumming a slow rhythm on the armrest. Salaris, the name alone dragged up memories, dark corridors, chains biting into his wrists, the screams of his crew as cold biomachines carved them apart in some twisted prison camp. Humanity had clawed its way to the stars with faster-than-light ships. Sure, but we were still insects next to the warlike might of the Salaris Empire. This signal, though, it wasn't just a cry for help. Embedded in the static was a pulsing code he recognized in an instant. A control sequence, the same damn one he'd seen in that camp, when a crazed machine ripped a prisoner apart, restructuring him into something no longer human. "Could be a trap," he muttered, voice low and rumbling like an engine warming up. "But if it's not, if it's one of their lost weapons, this might be humanity's only shot at leveling the field against those bastards." He turned to Jax. "Gear up the team. We're going in to see what's left of that wreck." The Silver Hawk glided through shimmering clouds of ice dust, closing in on Glacara-7, a desolate, frost-bitten planet, abandoned for millennia. Ahead loomed a Salaris vessel, massive and drifting aimlessly, its hull stretched for miles, a jagged expanse of verdant metal streaked with corrosion, as if time itself had gnawed at it. No lights flickered, no biosigns pinged, just a suffocating silence that swallowed everything. Leon led his crew through a jagged breach in the ship's side. The air inside hit them like a slap, thick, frigid, reeking of burnt metal. Flashlights from their armored suits cut through the gloom, revealing Salaris corpses strewn across the corridor floor. But these weren't ordinary dead. Their bodies were twisted horrors, limbs contorted like snapped cables, flesh melded with liquid metal, as if some alien tech beyond human grasp had restructured them into grotesque mockeries of life. Mara, a short-haired merc with a plasma rifle always at the ready, whispered, "What the hell happened here?" Before Leon could answer, a metallic screech echoed from the corridor's end. He signaled the team to halt, hand tightening around his energy rifle. A massive circular door groaned open, revealing an emergency bay still pulsing with faint green light. Inside, a towering figure fought with ferocious intensity, not unconscious, not helpless, but a Salaris warrior in full fury. Her skin gleamed verdant like molten metal. Her violet eyes blazed like twin flames. Silver hair flowed around her, defying gravity, as she swung an energy blade, cleaving a monstrous hybrid, half metal, half flesh, bristling with razor-sharp tendrils, in two. Leon froze. This was no ordinary Salaris. This was Queen Sylvana, the supreme ruler of their empire. A figure who never left her throne. But what chilled him to the core was what she defended, a small biopod. Cradling a child, its eyes were shut tight, yet a faint glow pulsed from its tiny form, flickering like the heartbeat of a dying star. Sylvana spun, her gaze locking onto Leon with lethal precision. Humans, she snarled, her voice reverberating like clashing steel. Leave now, or die with me. Sylvana's threat hung heavy in the frigid air of the emergency bay. Her words echoing like a blade striking steel. But Leon Carter didn't have the luxury of hesitation. Those violet eyes of the Salaris queen cut like razors, sharp enough to slice through doubt, but in that moment, he saw it. She wasn't the enemy. Not yet. Before he could process the thought, a piercing metallic shriek ripped through the silence, closer this time. Angrier, from the floor itself, abominations erupted, half machine, half flesh, their razor-sharp tendrils lashing out, sparking as they gouged the walls. Leon snapped a hand up, signaling his crew, fall back, protect that biopod at all costs. Sylvana stood defiant, her hands trembling from the gash on her shoulder, verdant blood oozing like liquid metal. But her grip on the energy blade never faltered. I'm not leaving without destroying this place, she growled, her voice a raw mix of pain and pride. This ship, it's infected. Leon opened his mouth to demand answers, but a deep, guttural boom shuddered through the vessel's core, cutting him off. The metal deck beneath their boots quaked, corridors pulsed like living veins, walls knitting themselves shut as cracks sealed with eerie precision. This wasn't a ship anymore, it was alive, and it was waking up. Leon scanned his team, Mara, slamming a fresh plasma clip into her rifle, Jax, clutching his scanner like a lifeline, the other two mercs, poised with thermal grenades. He locked eyes with Sylvana. You want to live, you're with me, now. Her gaze met his, cold as deep space, tinged with a flicker of desperation. I sent that signal to humans, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Not Salaris. My empire betrayed me. That child, it's all I have left. Before Leon could respond, a voice roared through the ship, not from speakers, not from any system, but from the metal itself. The shadows, the very air they breathed. The traitor returns, the key must be destroyed. Low and guttural, it thrummed like an engine ready to devour them. The monstrosities surged forward, faster, fiercer, a massive metal spider, its body a festering mass of flesh and steel, charged straight at Leon. He rolled aside, the beast's tendrils slashing inches from his face, and fired a burst from his energy rifle. The shots tore its head apart in a spray of sparks and gore, but from the ruin, new tendrils sprouted, writhing back to life. They don't die, Mara yelled, her plasma rounds lighting up the corridor as more creatures swarmed from the rear. Leon gritted his teeth. Humanity lacked the Salaris' brute strength, their biotech wizardry, but we had grit. Damn it, Jax, find me the power core. Mara, blast us a path with those grenades. He spun to Sylvana, now cradling the biopod with the child inside. You want this thing gone? I'll give you the biggest damn explosion you've ever seen. The team moved like a well-oiled war machine, small, scrappy, but lethal. Jax hacked into the ship's navigation grid, his fingers dancing over the scanner to chart a route to the core. Mara lobbed thermal grenades, each detonation a fiery roar that shoved the monsters back in waves of heat and shrapnel. Sylvana, weakening but unyielding, swung her blade, severing any tendril daring to near the child. They reached the core, a colossal orb of pulsing blue energy, wrapped in writhing metallic veins. Leon slapped a makeshift bomb onto it, a crude human contraption. Cobbled from scraps in spite, and set the timer. 30 seconds, run. They bolted, the ship's growls growing louder, more feral, as the Silver Hawk lifted off. A blinding explosion engulfed the Salaris vessel, turning it into a blazing fireball against the icy void. But from the wreckage, something emerged, a giant spherical machine, cracking open like an egg torn apart from within. A monstrous mechanical eye blinked to life, its red glare piercing straight into Leon and Sylvana on the Hawk's deck. It stared, unblinking, before everything faded to black, a silent warning from something far beyond Salaris, beyond humanity itself. The searing red glare of that massive mechanical eye still burned in Leon Carter's mind as the Silver Hawk tore through the void, leaving the smoldering wreckage of the Salaris ship in its wake. Inside the cramped medbay of his battered vessel, he stood with arms crossed, gray eyes cold and unyielding as they fixed on Queen Sylvana. She slumped against the wall, her verdant skin, shimmering like molten metal, now marred with wounds. Streaks of emerald blood seeped from her shoulder and hip, relics of her desperate fight to shield the child. That child lay silent in a biopod on the table, eyes shut tight, its frail body pulsing with a faint glow, like a lighthouse flickering in the dark. "You owe me answers," Leon said, his voice low and sharp, cutting through the hum of the ship like a blade. "The Queen of Salaris doesn't show up on a ghost ship, beaming signals to humans and battling monsters without a damn good reason. What's that kid, and why the hell am I caught up in this?" Sylvana lifted her head, violet eyes blazing into his, eyes that carried the pride of a ruler and the deep ache of betrayal. Her silver hair flowed around her, defying the ship's gravity, as if she were a being unbound by the laws of nature itself. "You want the truth, human," she replied, her voice ringing like struck steel. "That child, it's my blood, mine, and one of your kind's." Leon's brow creased, a chill snaking down his spine. "Impossible. Salaris and humans, that's never happened." But Sylvana's lips curled into a bitter, fleeting smile, laced with regret. "His name was Ethan Ride," she said, her tone softening as memory took hold. "A pilot from your Earth Alliance. Your brother in arms in that Salaris prison camp, where he survived." And he didn't. The name hit Leon like a dagger to the chest. Ethan, the man who'd thrown himself at a squad of Salaris guards to buy Leon time to escape. The last glimpse Leon had of him was a silhouette dragged into the dark by biomachines, swallowed by screams and grinding metal. "I met him on a covert mission," Sylvana continued, her voice fading into a whisper. "Lost in the past, he'd been captured after torching one of our outposts. I should have ended him, but I didn't. There was something about him, a weakling by our standards. Yet he burned with a fire even Salaris couldn't fathom. That child," she gestured to the biopod, "is the fruit of a forbidden love." She paused, letting the weight settle. "But it's more than a hybrid. It carries a genetic code that isn't ours, neither human nor Salaris. Something older, stronger, buried long before this galaxy was born." Leon stepped closer to the pod, peering at the child's tiny face. The glow pulsed faster, as if it sensed him. "You're saying it's a weapon?" he asked, skepticism edging his tone. Sylvana shook her head. "Not exactly, but others see it that way. General Zero's path, my right hand, once turned on me when he learned the truth. He believes that child threatens his grand design, to awaken an ancient weapon and wipe out every lesser race in the galaxy, starting with yours." Leon's fists clenched, memories flooding back, the shrieks, the stench of blood, the whir of metal tearing flesh in that prison camp. "Zeros," he growled under his breath. "He ran those experiments." Sylvana nodded, her gaze darkening. "I'm not fleeing my empire, Leon Carter. I'm hunted. Zeros wants that child dead to clear his path. And now, you, the one who survived his hell, are my last hope." A shrill alarm blared from the cockpit, shattering the heavy silence. Jax's voice crackled over the comms. Urgent and strained. Captain. New signal. Salaris fleet. Closing in fast. Leon's eyes flicked from Sylvana to the child. This secret was bigger than he'd bargained for, and now he was smack in the middle of it. Jax's warning klaxons still screeched in Leon Carter's ears as he wrestled the Silver Hawk through the void. Weaving past the probing scans of the encroaching Salaris fleet, he knew damn well they couldn't slug it out head-on. Humanity had never mustered the firepower to match the Empire's monstrous war machines. But Sylvana's words about the child, its ancient genetic code, Zero's dark schemes, gnawed at him, refusing to let him stand still. If it's really a key, he muttered, gray eyes locked on the nav screen's flickering grid. I've got to know what it unlocks before Zero's tracks us down. Sylvana stood beside him on the command deck, clutching the biopod with the child, her nod as cold and resolute as forged steel. Galactic, she said, her voice ringing like struck metal. That planet's more than a frozen wasteland. It was once the heart of an ancient civilization, wiped out long before Salaris or humans ever touched the stars. If answers exist, they're buried there. Leon didn't waste breath on questions. Time wouldn't wait for doubt. He barked at Jax to lock the coordinates, and the little ship plunged toward the icy surface of Galactic, where snowstorms howled like the ghosts of a forgotten age. The Silver Hawk touched down in a valley entombed in ice, its hull creaking against the biting cold. Leon led his crew out, their armored suits hissing in the sub-zero air. Sylvana followed, her verdant skin glinting, silver hair flowing wild as she carried the biopod, her violet eyes a blazing beacon in the frost. They approached an ancient structure half sunken in the ice, a colossal ruin. Its towering metal pillars etched with alien runes. At its center floated a spherical device, pulsing with a faint light that mirrored the glow from the child. Leon signaled Jax to scan it, but before the tech could move, Sylvana set the biopod down beside the artifact. A low boom rumbled from the earth, shaking the ice beneath their boots. The frozen crust split wide, and grotesque bio-machines clawed their way up, half metal, half flesh monstrosities, spider-legged and sharp, their crimson eyes glowing with menace. Mara raised her rifle, finger twitching on the trigger. But Leon threw up a hand. Hold it. His jaw dropped as the creatures didn't lunge, they lined up, bowing low, as if kneeling before the child in the pod. A voice thundered from the ancient device, deep, resonant, like a call from the void itself. The last heir of the stars, the key has returned. Light erupted from the sphere, bathing the valley in a radiant glow. A holographic vision flickered to life, vast cities spanning the cosmos. Titanic ships tearing through space, then all of it crumbling under a wave of shadow. Leon's heart pounded. This wasn't Salaris tech, it wasn't human either. The air quivered, and a cloud of energy materialized overhead, a living thing, hovering, studded with thousands of blinking eyes that stared down at them. Its whisper slithered into their minds, bypassing their ears. You are but fragments, yet fragments can still cut deep. Leon's grip tightened on his rifle, a chill racing down his spine. But before he could react, the cloud dissolved, leaving only confusion in its wake. Sylvana turned to him, her gaze unsteady. It knows the child. The device trembled again, its voice pressing on. The ancient civilizations didn't fall by chance. They were unmade, erased by a nameless force. This key is the final piece, sealed away to bury the truth. The hologram shifted, revealing a dazzling galaxy swallowed by darkness, leaving only faint sparks behind, sparks like humanity, like Salaris. Leon stared at the child, its glow now pulsing stronger, as if answering the artifact's call. If it's a piece, he murmured, voice rough with awe, what's the truth it's hiding? And who locked it away? Sylvana opened her mouth to reply, but the ground shuddered beneath them. From the horizon, Massive Salaris ships loomed into view, spearheaded by a towering war machine, a harbinger of Zero's Parth himself. The silhouettes of the Salaris fleet loomed over GLACARA-7's horizon like steel titans, their war engines roaring through the frigid air with a sound that split the silence like a thunderclap. Leon snapped his head up, gray eyes flashing with alertness as the lead machine came into view, a monstrous metal spider. Towering over the ancient pillars, its hundreds of razor-sharp arms glinting with crimson light, Zero's Parth had arrived, and he wasn't here to talk. Everyone, positions, Leon bellowed, his voice cutting through the howling wind of the icy valley. His crew sprang into action. Mara hoisted her plasma rifle, Jax clutched his scanner, and Sylvana gripped the biopod tighter, her violet eyes blazing with unyielding resolve. No warning came, no declaration of intent. A searing red beam erupted from the spider, shredding the ice in front of them with a deafening crack. Leon rolled clear, yanking Sylvana down behind a toppled pillar as shards flew past. "What does he want?" he snarled. But the answer hit fast. Dozens of bio-abominations poured from the support ships. Half machine, half flesh, their tendrils and claws gleamed as they surged forward like a tidal wave. Zeroing in on the biopod in Sylvana's arms, the fight ignited in a heartbeat. Mara unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts, streaks of light tearing through the air, but the creatures regenerated faster than she could kill them. Jax lobbed a thermal grenade, its fiery blast shoving back the nearest tendrils in a roar of heat and light. Yet the enemy's numbers seemed endless. Sylvana, despite the wounds from their last battle, fought like a tempest unleashed. Her energy blade sang as it cleaved a monster in two, emerald blood splattering across the ice. "They won't touch it," she roared, charging to shield the child as a massive metal arm from the spider swung down with lethal force. Leon had no time to marvel at her grit. He sprinted toward the Silver Hawk, digging out a jury-rigged device, cobbled from wires and an old power core. A relic from his days surviving the Salaris prison camp. "Jax, hold the line. Mara, cover me." He darted toward the spider, dodging its deadly sweeps, and slapped the gadget onto one of its support legs. With a few deft twists, he hacked its systems, turning the beast into a ticking bomb. A blinding explosion rocked the ground, ripping the spider apart in a storm of molten steel. From a distant command ship, a gravelly voice boomed over speakers. "No, this can't be." Zero's Parth, in all his fury, had shown himself. But victory was fleeting. Sylvana, mid-defense of the child, found herself surrounded by Salaris troops. She cut down two with ruthless precision, but a beam from an enemy ship slammed into her shoulder, dropping her to her knees. "Leon," she cried, hurling the biopod toward him with her last strength before cold metal hands dragged her away. Leon caught it, heart pounding, but before he could act, the earth quaked violently. A pitch-black beam lanced from Zero's flagship, tearing open an artificial black hole right in the valley's heart. Ice shattered, winds screamed, space itself twisted, ripped apart like fabric torn asunder. Leon clutched the biopod tight, the child's glow pulsing wildly as the void yanked them in. Sylvana's final scream echoed in his mind as she was hauled onto a Salaris ship. Protected. His crew, Mara, Jax, the others, were left stranded on the crumbling planet, facing Zero's wrath alone. As darkness swallowed him, Leon felt the child's light warm against his chest. Humanity might be outmatched by Salaris, outgunned, outtouched, but surrender wasn't in their blood. Not ever. And now, he was the last thread holding a secret bigger than the galaxy itself. The black hole's darkness swallowed Leon Carter like an endless tide, dragging him in the biopod with the child into a formless abyss. Sylvana's final scream, "Protected," echoed in his mind as his body stretched, tore, and reassembled in a reality beyond the galaxy he knew. When his eyes snapped open, he floated in a warp void, a liminal space between dimensions, where light twisted into bizarre spirals and time seemed to hold its breath. His gray gaze swept the emptiness, hunting for any sign of life, but there was only silence, a heavy, crushing silence, pressing against his chest like the gravity of a dead star. The biopod drifted beside him, the child's faint glow pulsing steadily, the lone heartbeat in this desolate nowhere. Leon reached out, pulling it close, the warmth of that light seeping through his icy armor. "We're still alive," he rasped, voice rough and uncertain, though he wasn't sure it was true. Then, a whisper stirred, not from the pod, not from him, but from the void itself. Massive shapes emerged from the shadows, vague, towering figures like forgotten gods, their forms shimmering like nebulae, too vast to fully see. Their voices rumbled in an alien tongue, vibrations rattling through his bones. Leon tightened his grip on the pod, straining to decipher the sounds beyond Salaris, beyond human speech, beyond anything he'd ever known. Then, as if his place answered his presence, the space before him shattered. An ancient memory flared to life, vivid as if he were living it. He saw Ethan ride, his pilot, his brother, lost to the Salaris prison camp, standing in a shadowed corridor, a spent plasma pistol dangling from his hand. Salaris guards closed in, but Ethan didn't flinch. He lunged for an ancient device, a glowing metal sphere, twin to the one on GLACARA-7, and touched it just as bio-machines dragged him into the dark. A burst of light erupted, then silence claimed it all. Leon's heart thudded hard. "Ethan," he breathed, the memory of that escape flooding back, the day he owed his life to that man's sacrifice. But before he could grasp it, a voice boomed, not from the looming figures, but from within him. "We are not the weak." It was deep, steady, a declaration carved from the depths of his soul. "We are the survivors." The warp void trembled, and the vision shifted. Leon saw sprawling cities strung across the stars, not Salaris, not the humanity of 2785, but an ancient civilization, radiant beyond imagining. Colossal ships ripped through the cosmos. Machines bent reality itself, until a shadow swept through, erasing it all in a single, merciless wave. He realized this wasn't just Ethan's past. He was staring into humanity's buried legacy. A time millions of years gone when they ruled the galaxy as lords. The child in the pod stirred, its glow flaring brighter, as if resonating with what he saw. Leon clutched it tighter, breath quickening. "This isn't random," he muttered, voice raw with realization. Ethan touched something, and now it's alive in this kid. The towering figures tilted their heads, watching him, their voices sharpening, still incomprehensible, yet piercing. A prophecy, a warning, a promise. He couldn't tell, but one truth burned clear. He stood at the core of a secret bigger than his own life. Leon Carter stood in the warp void, breath ragged as the child's light flared like a tiny flame against the endless dark. Those towering, silent shapes loomed around him, watching, waiting, as if expecting something from him, from humanity itself. His hands tightened around the biopod, a gnawing certainty growing within him. This wasn't just about Ethan or the child. It was bigger, deeper, something buried in the very blood coursing through his veins. Then the void quaked, and the energy cloud returned, a living entity, shimmering with thousands of blinking eyes, hovering like a sentient nebula. It didn't speak with sound. Its words carved themselves into his mind, cold and clear as steel slicing ice. "You seek the truth," its voice thrummed, not a question, but a command. "Behold, survivor, witness the legacy of your kind." Before Leon's eyes, the space splintered, unveiling a vision, a galaxy ablaze with glory. Cities floated among the stars, vast ships pierced the void, and machines bent time and space to their will. This wasn't Salaris. It wasn't the humanity of 2785. This was a civilization that had mastered every corner of the cosmos. wielding power to make the stars themselves bow. And then he saw it. The architects of this grandeur wore human faces, not the broken wretches cowering under Salaris's shadow, but lords of the galaxy. Humanity, Leon whispered, gray eyes whitening as the cloud pressed on. You were not newcomers, not insects beneath others' heels. You are the heirs of the rulers, those who forged this galaxy from fire and metal. The vision shifted, and a horrifying purge unfolded. A wave of shadow swept through, not war, not nature's wrath, but a deliberate annihilation. Cities crumbled, ships dissolved, and that mighty civilization was reduced to ash. A nameless force unmade them. The voice murmured, leaving you behind, shards of glory, cast down to weakness. Leon felt heat surge through him, blood pounding in his ears. What about Salaris? He roared, his voice echoing through the nothingness. The cloud tilted, its countless eyes flickering like mocking laughter. Salaris were not the first conquerors. They were an experiment, crafted by that very civilization, unleashed to test what remained. A final image bloomed, a child sealed in a glowing pod, its genetic code sparkling like a blueprint of the universe. This key, the entity intoned, pointing to the child in Leon's arms, is the last fragment, to awaken the sealed legacy and restore humanity to its throne. Before Leon could demand more, the child's light erupted, a blinding wave of white energy tearing through the warp void. His body jolted, the nothingness shattering around him, and he crashed onto a hard, cold surface, not the black hole anymore, but the metal deck of a Salaris ship. The child was still in his grasp, its glow dimming, but his eyes whitened as dozens of Salaris soldiers encircled him, their bio-armor glinting red. A hulking figure stepped forward, 7 feet of bio-armored menace. Eyes burning like twin furnaces, Zero's path. You survived the black hole. Zero's gravelly voice sneered, dripping with contempt, but you won't survive me. A metal arm slammed down, crashing into Leon's shoulder and sending him to his knees. The child rolled from his hands. In Salaris' troops' lung. We forward to seize them both. Leon gritted his teeth, blood trickling from his lips. Humanity might be heirs to galactic lords, but right now, he was just prey. Pain seared through Leon Carter's shoulder like wildfire. But he wouldn't break, not before Zero's path, not after glimpsing the truth of humanity's legacy. When the Salaris general's metal arm crashed down, Leon crumpled, blood trickling from his lips to mingle with the cold deck of the enemy ship. The child slipped from his grasp, the biopod clattering hard against the floor, and Salaris soldiers surged forward like ravenous wolves, their bio-armor glinting red in the shadows. Consciousness faded, but the vision of star-spanning cities, of humanity's sealed heritage, burned bright in his mind. He awoke, how long later? He couldn't tell, strapped to a metal pillar in a dim lab. Green energy cords biting into his flesh. Zero's towered before him, 7 feet of bio-armored menace, a living war machine. His crimson eyes gleamed with lethal promise, his gravelly voice rumbling like a revving engine. You're a persistent rat. Human, but it ends here. Beside him floated an ancient device, a pulsing metal sphere, identical to the one Ethan had touched, ringed by circles of red energy. The child lay in a separate containment pod, its faint glow stifled by coiling bio-tendrils. Zero's was enacting a ritual, something old, arcane, strange runes glowing on the floor, siphoning power from the child into the orb. Leon's gaze darted around the room, and his chest tightened when he saw Sylvana. The Salaris queen was bound to a pillar across from him, her verdant skin scarred and streaked, silver hair veiling half her face, yet her violet eyes blazed with defiance. Zero's, she shouted, her voice overpowering the hum of machinery. You can't destroy what you don't comprehend. He turned, his red glare flashing contempt. I comprehend enough, Sylvana. That child's a stain on Salaris' blood, and the key to a weapon that'll erase vermin like them. He jabbed a finger at Leon, This galaxy belongs to the strong. Leon clenched his jaw, straining against the cords as they scorched his skin. "You're wrong," he growled, voice hoarse but ironclad. "Humans aren't vermin, we're survivors, and I'll prove it." Sylvanas' eyes met his, flickering with something. Hope, before she roared. "Show him what humanity's worth." Leon Carter. Zero's laugh echoed, a chilling sound that filled the lab with frost. He raised a hand, and the orb flared red, drawing hard on the child's energy. A ripple pulsed through the air, space itself warping. The ritual neared its end, but just as Zero's moved to seal it, the ship lurched violently, a deep boom thundered from its core, and the child's light exploded, not a flicker now, but a blinding wave of white power, shredding the biotendrils and flooding the room. Leon hit the deck, his bonds disintegrated, but his body went numb under the blast's force. Zero's, meters away, dropped to one knee, sparks flying from his armor. The Salaris troops collapsed, clutching their heads in agony. No one grasped what was happening, not even Sylvana. Though her eyes glinted with faint hope, Zero's slammed a fist into the floor, roaring, "This is just a fluke. Nothing stops me." But then he looked up, and silence gripped the room as the child's eyes, now open, ignited like twin stars ablaze. Leon, aching, forced his head up. Those weren't a child's eyes anymore. They held the weight of something ancient. Terrifying, untamed, an invisible pressure surged outward, rattling the ship. Zero's staggered back, his red gaze faltering for the first time. Leon's lips curved into a faint, bloody smirk. "You're wrong, Zero's. This isn't a fluke, it's the beginning." The child's blazing eyes lit up the lab's metal walls like twin white flames. An invisible shockwave rippling out, shaking the air with raw power. Leon Carter, body numb from the energy blast moments before, felt a strange surge stir within him, not his own, but something ancient, tied to the legacy the energy cloud had unveiled in the black hole. Zero's Parth roared in fury, pounding the floor to haul himself up, sparks flying from his bio-armor. "Still intact, this is just a fluke," he bellowed, his gravelly voice reverberating through the chamber. Nothing halts Salaris, but those crimson eyes wavered as they fixed on the child, a being even he couldn't fathom. The ship shuddered again, not from the child this time, but from outside. Leon caught the growl of engines through the hull, a massive Salaris fleet. Dozens of warships packing enough firepower to obliterate a planet. Encircling Zero's vessel, the general spun to the console, metal hands hammering commands with frenzied speed. "Wipe them out," he barked over the comms, his tone sharp as a blade. "Erase every trace of the traitor and these filthy humans." Crimson energy barrages erupted from the fleet, zeroing in on the central ship. But before the salvo could strike, the child moved. An uncontrolled wave of energy exploded from its tiny frame, spreading like a cosmic storm. White light pierced every corner, cutting through the ship's thick armor. Leon stumbled back, eyes stinging from the blinding glare. But he heard metal clatter, not explosions, but the sound of Salaris soldiers hitting the deck. He blinked through the haze, and the sight stole his breath. Dozens of bio-armored troops knelt in utter silence, heads bowed as if before a god. Even Zero's, the invincible warlord, dropped to one knee, his red eyes wide with shock and dread. Sylvana, summoning her last reserves, tore free from her weakened bonds. She lunged for the child's pod, wrenching it open and pulling the small form into her arms. "My child," she whispered, silver hair draping her scarred, verdant face. But the moment fractured. Zero's, maddened, surged upright, a crimson energy blade snapping from his metal arm. "No!" Leon shouted, voice raw, but too late. The blade plunged through Sylvana's chest, emerald blood spraying across the floor. She crumpled, yet as the light faded from her eyes, she turned to Leon, her final words a faint murmur. "Take it, start anew." The child slipped from her grasp, its glow pulsing fiercely. Rage ignited in Leon like a supernova. He charged forward, snatching a broken shard from the floor, a small power core. The kind he'd once used to survive the Salaris camps. With human cunning and grit, he jammed it into a nearby control panel, hacking the ship's main core in mere seconds. "You want to erase us?" he roared, locking eyes with Zero's. "Erase this first." He triggered the core, and a cataclysmic blast tore through the ship, a wave of destruction rippling outward. Zero's desperate scream cut short as flames engulfed him, his bio-armor melting in the inferno. The surrounding Salaris fleet had no time to react. The explosion surged, obliterating dozens of warships in a blink, leaving smoldering husks adrift in the void. Leon threw himself over the child, shielding it with his body as the shockwave roared past. When the smoke cleared, he rose amid the wreckage, blood streaming from his brow, but his gray eyes burned with unshakable resolve. Humanity didn't just survive, they'd taken down Salaris's mightiest, with a strength the galaxy had long forgotten. Smoke and flames still curled from the ruins of the Salaris ship, molten metal fragments drifting through the void like the ashes of a fallen empire. Leon Carter stood on the edge of life and death, blood dripping from his brow onto the scorched deck, his hand clenched tight around the biopod cradling the child. His breaths came heavy, ragged, but his gray eyes shone with an unshakable resolve, the kind forged in the fires of hell and carried through to tell the tale. Zero's was gone, his fleet shattered, yet Leon knew this wasn't the end. Sylvana's whisper, "Take it, start anew," echoed in his skull. A promise, a command he couldn't turn away from. The child stirred in the pod, its faint glow no longer flickering but blazing like a newborn star. Leon stepped back as the pod cracked open on its own, and the child, once a fragile thing, rose to its feet. Its eyes burned like twin forges, its small frame radiating an untamed energy that warped the space around it. This was no mere hybrid of human and Salaris blood, it was something beyond. An embodiment of an ancient legacy the galaxy had long buried. Then, a signal burst forth, not a sound, but a wave of power rippling across the cosmos, piercing every corner of the galaxy. Its voice thundered into the minds of all living things, unspoken yet undeniable. The age of the old rulers is over. The age of the heirs has begun. Leon felt that signal quake through his bones, a call resonating in the very marrow of humanity. He peered out through a jagged gash in the hull, and his heart slammed against his ribs as the void began to glow. From the galaxy's shadowed fringes, hundreds of tiny ships emerged, not the hulking war machines of Salaris, but the patched-together hulks of humankind, mercenary rigs, mining haulers, even civilian crafts, all scarred by centuries of oppression. But now, they weren't running, they advanced, their ranks ragged yet resolute, ready to face the ones who'd once dismissed them as insects. The child stepped to Leon's side, its blazing eyes piercing into him, as if seeing through to his soul. He knelt, resting a hand on its shoulder, feeling the ancient power coursing through it, the might of Star-Lords reborn in a child and a human warrior. "You did it," he murmured, voice rough but thick with pride. "You woke us up." The child didn't reply, but its light softened, as if passing the torch to him. Leon rose, leading the child to the deck, or what remained of it. He gazed out at the boundless sky, where human ships gathered, their lights twinkling like newborn stars. Blood and sweat streaked his scarred face, but for the first time, he felt something beyond survival, a purpose. "I used to think we were just survivors," he said, his low voice ringing clear in the stillness, his hand gripping the child's tiny one. "But now I know, we're the ones chosen to begin again." The space around him seemed to expand, and in the distance, the human ships began to form ranks, not a perfect army, but an alliance of the overlooked, the outcast, now rising to reclaim their place. Comms crackled to life, voices of captains cutting through. "We heard the signal. We're ready." Leon's lips curved into a faint smile, the grin of a man who'd walked through darkness and emerged whole. This galaxy had once been humanity's, and now it would be again, not through brute force, but through the unbreakable will of its last heirs.